Yeah, great pleasure to have joining us today on the show a man who has co-written really an interesting book. It's called Abundance. The Future is Better Than You Think. He wrote it along with Peter H. Diamandis, and we're joined today by best-selling author Stephen Kotler today by telephone. And Stephen, good to talk to you. How are you?
I'm well, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing great. I had a chance to read through the book last week, and after reading it, Stephen, I feel better about myself. I guess that's part of the point here, right?
I'm glad we can help.
It talks about, obviously, people think, well, things maybe not be going the direction or we're in bad shape, but the premise, at least from what I get out of this, is that at least technology-wise, we're in probably kind of the forefront of a whole new beginning, aren't we?
We are kind of in a really amazing time, and I first of all, I think before we get to the future, in a sense, I think it's a decent point to make that the present is significantly better than most people give it credit for. You just got to kind of look at a couple of things. Food, for example, is 13-fold cheaper than it was 100 years ago. Income has tripled over the past 100 years. Our longevity has more than doubled. Child mortality has dropped tenfold. And as Steven Pinker has pointed out in his recent bestseller, we're living at the most peaceful time in human existence. Violence has dropped 100-fold since the Middle Ages. So I think the present is a lot better than people think. But what's coming in the future is really astounding.
Yeah, you just get the feeling. I talked to my mom and my parents' generation, and as they grew up, I mean, you really take for granted now how easy it is to, like you said, food alone. Just going to the supermarket, every choice you have there. Back when she grew up, you went to one store for meat, one store for milk, or that kind of thing, and medical attention. Obviously, she was born at home. She was telling me. I mean, now most people are born in hospitals and in pretty good conditions. So you make a good point there. Even just 30, 40, 50 years ago, the changes that we've gone through.
It's pretty astounding. One of the things we talk about in the book is exponentially growing technology. One of the technologies that is kind of on an exponential growth curve right now is information and communication. You got to think about it this way. Right now, a Maasai warrior in Kenya on a cell phone has better telecom information and communications capabilities than President Reagan did 25 years ago. If they're on a smartphone with access to Google, they've got better access to information and communication than President Clinton did 15 years ago. This is astounding.
I always think of, I think Buzz Aldrin might have said this in an interview, the computer that's in your car today is about 100 times better than they had in the Apollo 11 to go into the moon. That's kind of scary.
Oh, yeah. The computer that's sitting in your pocket, right, your smartphone, this is, which costs you probably less than $200. It is, more powerful than an $8 million supercomputer from the 70s. Right, that filled a room, and you've got it sitting in your pocket and costs less than $200. That's amazing.
It really is. We'll talk a little bit about, obviously, you talked in about the technology we have today, but why do you think, Stephen, people are thinking, well, we're not in as great a position as we should be? Is that just because we're kind of going through a change right now, technology and politically, or what do you think?
Well, I think there's a number of different answers to that question. But first and foremost, first I'd like to say it's a great question. And the first and foremost thing is we're essentially hardwired pessimists. It's just the way the brain is built. Every second, millions and millions and millions of bits of information come at us, and all of this stuff gets scooped up by our senses and gets plugged into the brain, and the very first stop all this information takes in the brain is a spot of temporal lobe called the amygdala. The amygdala is essentially our danger detector. It served us a lot of good a long time ago when dangers kind of came in the tiger and the bush variety, but dangers today are very, very, very different, and it doesn't really matter. All this information kind of comes into our brain, goes right to the amygdala, and the amygdala is primed to look for bad news. So it does. On top of that, the media makes it significantly worse because the media knows this. The old newspaper saw if it bleeds, it leads, works because bad news sells because the amygdala is always primed to look for something to fear. And this is just kind of the first part of this. So that all this information is coming into your brain, getting detected by your danger detector, but your brain has also developed a bunch of cognitive, basically processing shortcuts, right? It's got a lot of information coming in, and it's got to process it very, very, very quickly to keep you alive. So it's developed what are called cognitive shortcuts. When these shortcuts work, they're known as heuristics, and when they fail, they're called cognitive biases, as Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman has our cognitive biases. For example, the negativity bias is a tendency to privilege bad news over good. Or we have the confirmation bias, which is a tendency to hear things that confirm what we believe and ignore everything else. And by ignore, I mean literally the information doesn't even reach our senses. Now, the confirmation bias on its own isn't that dangerous, but when with the media bombarding us with supposed bad news over and over and over again, you start adding these things together, and you basically have a brain convinced that we're living in a state of siege, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
Yeah, very, very true there. I guess in a sense, the technology of the media almost reinforces the negativity at times if you let it. I mean, obviously we have our own choices to make there, but that makes it a little more difficult to overcome. But just quickly, I know we have limited time today. Just some of the terms you use in the book about building the pyramid and as far as what we're going to do in the future. You talk about water. You talk about feeding potentially 9 billion people, which the Earth could have in the next 30, 40, 50 years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
About feeding the population?
Just an example of that. I mean, technology is going to have to do that, and you talk about the techno-philanthropists that are going to help with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about 3 technologies that are all growing, at incredible rates. You have genetically modified food, which a lot of people got very, very nervous with for a while, but at this point you've got, I believe it's over 1 trillion or 1 billion genetically modified meals have been served. Nobody's ever gotten sick. This technology, up till now, has been used to kind of decrease pestilence and increase crop growth rates. But in the future, you've got nutritionally packed, fortified food. We have vertical farms. We're going to start growing our food inside of skyscrapers, and which allows us to do it using significantly less energy, less water, stop soil erosion, all these things. We've got in vitro meat, which is literally steak grown from stem cells. So you have a massive cattle ranching industry, which does a tremendous amount of environmental farm. But within a few years, and these technologies are here today. Within a few years, we're going to be growing our meat inside of bioreactors from stem cells.
Wow. Huge
leverage in solving the world's problems.
I like to hear that. Yeah, that's great. And then you talk about techno-philanthropists. I guess those are the folks that have the money that invest in these type of technologies, right? So you need those people as well, don't they, to kind of fund the research and put these things together, right?
Well, when we talk about these 4 emerging forces that are really driving us to this world of abundance, one of which is exponential growing technology, which we've spoken about already. Another, as you pointed out, is the techno-philanthropist, and this is a whole new breed of philanthropists, right? These are people who have essentially, people like Bill Gates and Jeff Skoll, whatever, they essentially have the wealth of nation states at this point. And, unlike the philanthropists of old who, built buildings in their honor, locally, by the way, they built usually in their hometown, this new breed techno-philanthropists, they're interested in solving grand challenges. Bill Gates is going after malaria. Jeff Skoll is going after pandemics and nuclear proliferation. Pierre Omidyar is trying to bring electricity to the developing world. This is an incredibly potent force for abundance. We also talk about the newfound power of the DIY innovator, the do-it-yourself innovator, who for the very first time in history, small groups of individuals can take on challenges that not 20 to 30 years ago were the provinces of large corporations and government. And then the third force, and the one I'm probably most excited about, we call the rising billion. This is the world's poorest of the poor. Think about it this way. Today, there are 7 billion people in the world. 2 million are connected to the internet. Within 10 years, that number is going to jump to 5 billion. So 3 billion new minds are coming online for the very first time. We've never, ever had access to these people's minds before. What will they create? What will they consume? What will they desire? This is an incredibly potent force for changing the world.
Well, I don't have to ask you, Stephen, if you're optimistic. I can tell from talking to you today and just reading through the book, it is an optimistic outlook, and I think we all should be that way. And I think people that read this book are going to get some great insight into that. And Stephen, give out a website. People can get a hold of the book, or maybe send you a message if they like.
Absolutely. Our website is abundancethebook.com, and we think this message is so important, and it's so important to get out there. We're giving away the first chapter for free, so you can kind of get a peek at what we're actually talking about. But it's abundancethebook.com.
Great. Abundance. Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think is the title. We've been joined by Stephen Kotler, who wrote it along with Peter H. Diamandis. And Stephen, appreciate taking a few minutes today and enjoy talking with you. We'll look forward to talking to you again down the road.
Thank you, Doug. Have a great day.